Oh, you're here. Good. I was hoping for company. You see, I've got stories, dark ones, chilling ones, the kind that keep you up at night. Mythical creatures, curses, horrors you can't escape. Shall we begin? Don't worry, I won't bite. Much.
Once upon a time, in a small village with only a few dozen households, there lived a farmer named Lee. He was already in his 30s, but had yet to marry, something uncommon in rural communities of the past. Lee himself was anxious about it, but his short stature and plain looks meant that every woman introduced by matchmakers rejected him. Lee was his parents' only son, and they were even more worried than he was. They longed for a grandson, but saw no hope in sight. One day, a matchmaker came to them with a suggestion. There was a woman in a neighboring village named Liz, who was also nearing 30 and still unmarried. She would be a perfect match for their son. The moment they heard the name, Lee's parents adamantly shook their heads. Absolutely not. That woman is notorious for being fierce. Everyone in the surrounding villages knows about her scandalous reputation. But the matchmaker dismissed their concerns. Forget the gossip. The fact remains. She's unmarried, and if your son waits any longer, even widows with children might not want him. That night, Lee's parents could not sleep. After much deliberation, they reluctantly decided to let their son meet Liz. Meanwhile, Liz's family was equally distressed. Despite having many lovers, none were reliable enough to marry her, and she had ruined her own reputation. When the matchmaker proposed Lee, her parents quickly agreed. At least he's an honest man, they reasoned. So what if he's not good looking? And so, the marriage was arranged. Lee's family threw a grand 3-day feast to welcome their new daughter-in-law. But the joy didn't last. Less than 6 months into the marriage, the household was in complete turmoil. Liz constantly berated Lee, calling him weak and useless. When she lost her temper, she resorted to violence, frequently beating her husband. Worse still, Lee's elderly parents were also subjected to her wrath. On multiple occasions, she even struck her mother-in-law. One day, after she hit his mother yet again, Lee could no longer tolerate it. In a fit of rage, he tied Liz up and locked her in a room overnight. The next day, she stormed back to her parents' house, gathered a group of her relatives, and returned to Lee's home. They smashed everything in sight: the water jars, the pigsty, even the stove. Lee's parents were devastated. Completely despairing, they made a painful decision. "We should just end it," Lee's father murmured. His wife, weeping, nodded in agreement. They walked to an enormous willow tree at the edge of the village. "This tree is strong enough to hold both of us," they murmured as they prepared a rope. Just as they were about to tie it, something incredible happened. The tree's trunk suddenly split open, revealing a hidden door. From within stepped a beautiful young woman, her presence radiant and otherworldly. Her long, flowing hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes held an ancient wisdom. "I am Willow, the spirit of this tree," she said gently. "Tell me, why do you wish to end your lives?" The elderly couple fell to their knees and tearfully recounted their suffering. Willow listened with sympathy. "Perhaps your daughter-in-law behaves this way because you are poor. If you had wealth, she might not dare to mistreat you." With that, she handed them 2 golden ingots. The old couple had never seen such treasure before. They held the gold in awe, unable to speak. Willow smiled. "Use this to build a new house for your son and daughter-in-law. Start a small business. Buy her jewelry and fine clothes. If she still mistreats you, return to me. Knock 3 times on the tree, and I will hear you." With that, she stepped back into the tree, and the door vanished without a trace. Overjoyed, the old couple hurried home, unaware that Liz had been secretly watching. She had followed them, expecting to witness their suicide, but instead, she had seen something far more valuable. Liz had a secret lover, Jack, a scoundrel from her home village. She rushed to find him, and after a brief discussion, they hatched a plan. The two hurried back to the willow tree. Liz knocked 3 times. Just as before, the hidden door opened, and Willow stepped out. But the moment she appeared, Liz and Jack lunged forward, throwing a sack over her head and dragging her back inside the tree. Inside, they found an enormous chamber filled with gold, silver, and precious jewels. Their eyes gleamed with greed as they stuffed their bags full. Bound tightly, Willow struggled and pleaded, "Please, stop! These riches are not meant for you." But Liz and Jack ignored her. Once their bags were full, Jack pulled out a jug of kerosene, dousing the chamber. Willow's eyes widened in horror. "What are you doing?" Liz smirked. "What do you think? We're burning this place down. Can't have you running off to tell anyone." With that, she struck a match and tossed it. The fire spread instantly. Flames roared through the chamber, engulfing everything. Just as the fire reached Willow, her body began to change. Her skin turned a brilliant green, and she floated into the air, her ropes burning away. Her eyes glowed red with fury. "You fool," she thundered. "For your greed I curse you. You shall live forever, never knowing peace, never finding rest." With those words, she vanished into the inferno. Outside, Liz and Jack watched the tree burn to ashes. They laughed. "Living forever? That's a blessing, not a curse." Taking their stolen wealth, they fled into the mountains, hiding their treasure in a rocky crevice before collapsing in exhaustion inside a cave. The next morning, Liz woke up and screamed. Jack's lower body had turned into solid wood, his legs fusing into a tree trunk. The transformation was still spreading. Jack woke at the sound of her scream, only to see that Liz was changing too. Her own legs had turned to wood, and the bark was creeping upward. They tried to crawl out of the cave, but their tree-like bodies were too heavy. No matter how hard they struggled, they could barely move. Days passed. Their transformation was complete. They had become trees, except for their eyes, which still moved. One day, a passing shepherd followed a strange, sweet fragrance into the cave and found the 2 eerie trees. Word spread, and soon government officials arrived. Believing the trees to be sacred sandalwood, they uprooted them and brought them to the emperor's palace. The emperor adored the trees, for their scent relieved stress and headaches. He kept them in his chambers for years, but as he grew old, he gave one final order. "When I die, bury these trees with me." And so, Liz and Jack were entombed in the imperial mausoleum, swallowed by darkness, trapped for all eternity. Centuries passed. When archaeologists finally unearthed the emperor's tomb, they found 2 strange pieces of wood, still unrotted, still exuding a mesmerizing fragrance. But the most baffling part, the wood still had moving eyes. Science could not explain why the wood never decayed, why it smelled so intoxicating, or why its eyes still wept. And so, Liz and Jack were placed in a museum, encased in glass, doomed to stare at each other for all eternity. Who knows? Perhaps true immortality is the cruelest fate of all.